What is up, YouTube? Matt McKeever here. It's been a little while since we went live. In fact, I think it's been 2 weeks. Hopefully, I've got everything working, though. So if you guys can hear and see me, let me know in the comment section. And today, what I want to be chatting with you guys about is, if it was 2021, if I wasn't Matt McKeever, how would I get started in real estate investing? I've been getting a lot of these DMs on social media, Instagram. I've also recently had a couple of my team members reach out. They also want some guidance. And I consistently find that they're coming across the same obstacles. They're hitting the same roadblocks. They're consistently making the same mistakes. So my goal today is really just explore that subject matter. If you guys have any questions around buying your first property, let me know in the comments section. Jump in there. Feel free to ask any and all questions. I'm more than happy to answer. But I'm going to call these the two biggest issues that I regularly come across when someone's thinking about becoming a real estate investor is one, they get way too tunnel focused or tunnel visioned on one arbitrary or random thing. So oftentimes, people will be like, well, should I buy a single family or a multifamily first? Or alternatively, they're going to pick some arbitrary constraints and try and force those constraints upon themselves as a brand new investor in order to try and succeed. So that could look like, hey, I want to become a real estate investor, but it has to happen this way. And so oftentimes what that looks like is it has to be in this city, or it has to be this exact business model, or I need to use only a big bank, or I can only use the bank I'm familiar with already dealing with. That's completely the wrong way to approach real estate investing. So what we're going to start off with here first is high level, just discussing what's actually important for you to get your perspective on how to go about becoming a real estate investor. And then, yes, near the end, we'll get into some tactical stuff because I know you guys most people just ignore me until we get into the tactical, but I swear to God, there is a reason why I focus on these high level concepts and really discovering your why, figuring out what it is you're trying to accomplish as a real estate investor before we start arbitrarily becoming a real estate investor. So speaking of that, I'm going to pull up my screen share here. And essentially, you guys should see right now my new website. So FYI, if you guys didn't know, there's a new website. Really encourage you guys to check it out. You can find it at mattmckeever.com. So encourage you to jump over there. But if you didn't know, there's a bunch of different resources. So one, if you want to learn a little bit about real estate investing, I shared two of the biggest mistakes 99% of beginner real estate investors make. And essentially, it's choosing the market or strategy before setting a goal or discovering their why. And second one is setting a vague goal that has no accountability. And so again, these are big struggles that every single real estate investor, when they first get started, seems to struggle with. So really hoping that we can avoid that with you guys. So I'll leave you guys to check out this webpage here. You can go through it. Again, it's just completely free. But what I really want to highlight is over here, we've got an ebook section. So I've actually got way more ebooks than this. We're going to be updating the website soon. But the ebook that you guys should be focused on first when you're first trying to become a real estate investor is The Secret to Starting Your Real Estate Empire. So this ebook, you can literally just read it now on the website completely free, or you can download it. All you need to do is give me your email address and we'll send it to you. So again, trying to make this as easy as possible in the hopes that you guys avoid the common mistakes that I see every real estate investor make. So what we cover in this ebook, and again, really encourage you guys to check it out on my website, mattmckeever.com, is first just really identifying two big issues that people fall victim to before they even ever become a real estate investor. And so the first one is shiny object syndrome, or let's call it SOS. And so essentially, this is the tendency for let me zoom in here for you guys, but this is the tendency for a real estate investor to choose a new market, a new strategy, or just some other sort of hybrid thing that they've seen some internet guru often or some other random person at a meetup event doing. And rather than staying focused on what they originally set out to do, they immediately jump ship. So this is the concept of the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence. This happens to so many real estate investors. I'll see someone, decide, okay, I'm going to be a flipper. And then 2 weeks later, they hear about Airbnb re-rentals. And they're like, no, screw flipping. I want to become an Airbnb re-rentaler. Well, if you're changing your business model on a whim, if you're changing it week to week or month to month, you're not going to make it long-term as a real estate investor. Now, that doesn't mean that we need to become beholden to only one strategy, but it means you do need to spend enough time on one or two strategies at the start of becoming an investor before you decide to dabble with every single strategy that's out there. This is just a concept of divide and conquer, right? Let's focus on understanding one or two things fundamentally well before we start pivoting and moving on to other options. And one of the big reasons that people find it so easy to fall victim to SOS or shiny object syndrome is because they don't have a real understanding of their why for becoming a real estate investor. So right now, if the reason you want to get into real estate is to make money or be rich or have a mansion, I hate to break it to you guys, but that's not a good enough reason to become a real estate investor. You're not going to be willing to put in the hard work, the dedication to step outside of your comfort zone and really answer the call to adventure as a real estate investor. So we'll get into how you guys can actually get a firm understanding of what your why is in a second. But the second one is analysis paralysis. And so this is the person that, unlike the shiny object syndrome individual, they're almost on the opposite side of the equation, where they'll do spreadsheets for days. They'll maybe read 100 books, but they never work up the courage to actually take that leap of faith and plunge into the first deal or plunge into taking on the new strategy or whatever the thing is that they've been wanting to do, but failing to actually execute on. So the root of the problem for any investor is suffering from one or two of these afflictions, right? So you've got no clear path or goal. And that's the reason it's so easy for you to jump and pivot all the time. Or it's the reason why you feel like you've never done enough research or you've never read enough, is because you don't have a clear identified goal. Or you've got no sense of urgency. So you know this is possible, but why do it today when you can do it tomorrow? And again, there's a lot of people out there that they understand fundamentally what they need to do. Back in the start of 2020, my theme for all of 2020 was make more offers, get more deals. Yet how many of you have heard me harp about this time and time again, and yet failed to actually go and make an offer, and yet failed to make an offer every week or make an offer every day? If you want to get rich as a wholesaler, I promise you, if you spend the next 365 days making offers, and every single day, including Christmas Day, you make an offer, you will make a deal happen. In fact, I trust that you'll actually make several deals happen, because that's one of the fastest ways I could imagine writing offers, engaging with potential sellers and realtors, and really just forcing yourself through the uncomfortable experience of embarrassing yourself on the first handful of offers, or maybe the first handful of dozens of offers, depending upon your current experience level. But you will learn a lot going through that process. Nothing beats repetition, right? You can't crush the test. You can't crush your physical physique. You can't crush real estate investing unless you're willing to put in the work necessary. And oftentimes it needs to be whatever amount of work is necessary. Again, people that are like, yeah, I'll become a real estate investor, but only if it takes 1 hour a week. Again, you're already starting off not trying to enjoy the process, not trying to enjoy the educational or learning experience, but you're already forcing random constraints on yourself. This isn't a good way to get started in any endeavor, and definitely not a good way to get started with real estate investing. And then finally, the other big issue I see is they don't believe in the goal. And so if you don't really believe it's possible, if you haven't seen or found your Roger Bannister, right, that person that's ran a 4-minute mile, if you guys don't know, I'll leave it to you to go Google Roger Bannister in the 4-minute mile. But in essence, up until he ran it, most people believed it was impossible for a human to run a 4-minute mile. Once he did it, all of a sudden, a bunch of individuals started doing it within a few years of him accomplishing that goal. And one of the big reasons that people attribute this situation, this occurrence to have occurred, is simply because, hey, you know what? Once people knew it was possible, they were willing to put in more work and more effort because, hey, if that guy can do it, I know I can do it as well. This holds true for myself even. When I was first thinking about getting into student rentals as my first investment property back when I was 25 years old, about 11 years ago now, that's crazy in and of itself, but 11 years ago, I was on the precipice. I was about to buy and close on my first student rental, and I was scared shitless. And one of the reasons I was scared shitless was because no one I knew was a real estate investor. So when I turned to people to try and get advice or perspective, those individuals were telling me crazy, terrible things. You don't want to be a landlord. You've got a good white-collar job. Why would you risk everything to have to go on unclogged toilets? Why would I take advice from people that weren't actively executing on what I wanted to do? Well, for a lot of us, it's because we don't know any better. We don't even have anyone in our lives that are real estate investors. And so until you start surrounding yourself with like-minded individuals, until you start actually learning from other real estate investors, it's going to be really easy for you and those around you to plant doubts in your own head that are going to hold you back from making the serious commitment to get the results you want. So I'm going to keep breezing through this, but again, I really want you guys to spend some time and go through this if you haven't done it before. Get clarity on what your why is. There's no upsell here. I literally want to save you guys a lot of pain and hassle as a real estate investor. I don't know how to zoom in well here. Okay, here we go. As a real estate investor, so that you don't make the same mistakes. There's no nobility in making the same mistakes that everyone else made. If you can, learn from others' mistakes, do it. Absolutely do it. So the concept here is from originally Joe Stump. It was popularized by Dean Graziosi, I believe, and maybe even I'm drawing a blank now, but another guru. And anyways, the whole concept here is just keep asking yourself the question why until you hit an emotional nerve, until you hit something that really matters to you. So oftentimes when I'm doing this exercise with a coaching client or an employee even, it starts off with, okay, you want to become a real estate investor. A lot of people watching my YouTube channel want to become a real estate investor. But why is real estate investing important to you? And oftentimes it's because I want money, or I want more money, or I want some freedom. And then we need to ask a follow-up question again, which is why? Why is that important to you? Why is it important that you make money or that you make more money? And again, sometimes it's because I want to quit my job, or I don't like the financial position I find myself in. And we need to keep digging deeper because that's not an emotional nerve. That's not a hill that you're going to be willing to die on. Okay, so why is it important that you quit your job or that you have more money? Well, I don't like my job. I want to spend more time with family. I want to make a passive income, or I want to live the lifestyle that I've always dreamed of. Okay, we're starting to get somewhere a little bit closer, but we need to actually continue to dig deeper. So why is it important for you to quit your job and make passive income? Well, maybe it's because I want to spend more time with my family. And that's really what all those previous answers I was giving you added up to. Okay, well, why is spending more time with your family important? And this is a real one that a lot of you can likely resonate with, but maybe it's because my parents never got to spend as much time with me as I would have liked. Maybe I didn't have the childhood that I felt, would benefit my children. Maybe I want to give my children a better life than the life I had. Very noble goal. And now we're starting to get into an emotional nerve or an emotional core. Now, again, I encourage you continue to keep going deeper. Keep asking yourself why. Some people will say, keep asking yourself why until essentially you cry, that you find an answer, that you find a reason that's so powerful to you that you're willing to get emotional about it. But in my opinion, what's really important is it needs to be an emotional nerve. Once we've got that emotional nerve, we can then tether it or tag it to building out a specific set of goals. Let's call them SMART goals, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. Then we can really start reverse engineering what milestones are necessary in order for you to achieve that goal you set out. So a common story I tell is, maybe I'm talking to a family member and I'm trying to explain to them the possibility that they could actually get control of their financial lives, that they could actually invest in real estate, build passive income, build up a small business that doesn't take all their daytime, right? It doesn't take 8 hours a day in order to manage it. How does that sound? And for a lot of them, they're like, oh, that sounds great. And then I'll say, okay, well, what's your goal? And they'll blurt out a random number that means nothing to them. $10 million. Cool. $10 million is a big number. There's nothing wrong with having big goals. But what does that actually really mean to you? Is that really a hill that you're willing to die on? Is $9 million just an unacceptable failure in your opinion? Or is $10 million just a big round number where you're like, well, I'll definitely never have any fears or concerns or, doubts if I was to have that big of a number? Well, the problem with $10 million as an arbitrary goal for yourself as a real estate investor is it's difficult to believe in it. Do you understand what that $10 million means to you, right? Does it actually mean that your kids get to spend more time with you? Does it mean that, your kids live a better life? Does it mean that you get to spend more time with your family, or you get to become the man or the woman that you've always dreamed of becoming? That's a much more powerful motivator than 8 random digits in a bank account. And yet far too often I find people falling victim to this mentality of really just wanting big numbers. I want to get a high score. Well, again, if we dig deeper, that high score probably isn't about the high score. Maybe it has to do with some, confidence issues. Maybe it's to show up your brother-in-law or your father-in-law or whoever happens to be a foil in your life. And again, it's much more valuable for us to actually start pulling those threads, explore that, and figure out how we can make that a healthier relationship, or if we can't, how to essentially avoid interacting with those individuals that maybe are toxic or a cancer to us in our futures. But just picking an arbitrary number to, middle finger it to a random family member or friend that doesn't believe in you, or for whatever reason you've got beef with, it's probably not going to be a strong enough reason for you to actually follow through on years of work, right? Years of effort in becoming a real estate investor. If you can fall in love with the process, you will make progress. But the problem is most people are unwilling to fall in love with the process until they see progress. And this is kind of a chicken and the egg scenario, but you need to actually enjoy becoming a real estate investor. You need to learn to enjoy learning in order to actually learn what's necessary to go on and get that progress, start achieving that success. So again, we're not going to be able to solve everyone's, 7 levels wide deep on this live stream, but I really do encourage you guys. It's completely free. Go get the ebook, take the exercises, spend some time with yourself. And then once you actually start really getting down to the bottom of what's important to you. And so what I've got here in the bottom right hand of the screen here is essentially just breaking down what that looks like for a lot of people. So here's a few examples to illustrate this concept of once we understand our why, then we can start building SMART goals. Then we can start actually identifying potential milestones. So the why. Maybe it's quit the job, passive income. I want to become family focused. Awesome. Well, what's the goal? Well, I need to replace my day job, right? I know that my family can live a good life, a good lifestyle on our current income. And if I didn't have to go work, I could become a better person. I could spend more time with them. I could, whatever the case is for yourself. Okay, awesome. Well, what do you currently make? Let's say that you're kind of the average Canadian. Maybe you're making $60,000 a year. All right, well, that's $5,000 a month. And so if we're going to quit our job, we're going to need to have access to that $5,000 a month. So it's not good enough for us to have $5,000 a month in appreciation. We're going to need cash flow, right? We're going to actually need money that we can spend in order to support or live that lifestyle. Okay, great. Well, what's one of the ways that we could do that? Well, you could invest in cash flowing rental properties, or you could become a private lender. But again, understanding that each one of those will actually have slightly different milestones and definitely a different framework that we're going to need to build out in order for you to achieve that goal. All right, let's move on here. So then essentially, once we're starting to look at these goals, we need to get very specific. We need to make them measurable. We need to ensure they're achievable, that they're realistic and timely. I'll give you guys some homework. You can just go study that on your own time. But oftentimes what this looks like is there's an actual evolution to your SMART goals. So when someone first starts this exercise, it often starts off with, hey, I want to quit my job and do absolutely nothing and keep my lifestyle. All right, well, that's something, but let's keep refining this. Okay, well, in order to live my lifestyle, maybe I spend $5,000 a month. Okay, so I need to replace $5,000 a month in passive or semi-passive income. Okay, well, V3 could look like my goal is $5,000 per month in spendable cash flow from passive sources. Maybe it doesn't sound like a big difference to you guys, but this is actually really important. Now, when people start talking about ideas like The Secret or visualizing your goals, me being a CPA, an accountant by trade and background, I naturally, when I hear too much woo-woo, I start, kind of tuning it out or thinking like, I don't know about this. But understand, if you can't dream it, you can't achieve it, right? Like if you can't envision yourself getting that success, if you've never seen someone do what you're trying to do before, if you don't believe that someone in your situation can achieve it, it's going to be really easy for you to self-sabotage. It's going to be really easy for you to rationalize not doing the extra effort. It's going to be easy for you to rationalize why you shouldn't network, why you shouldn't go the extra mile, why you shouldn't stay up late reading books, blogs, watching YouTube videos to try and improve yourself. Whereas if we spend some time and we really start building out at least a mental concept or construct of that future that we want, it's going to become a lot easier for you guys to actually start making progress towards it. It's also going to be a lot easier for you to fall in love with the process, which is how we get to the progress in the first place. Version 4 might look like, hey, I need to actually review some constraints. I need to review what sort of relevant strategies might generate $5,000 a month. I probably need to do a personal inventory. What resources, what skills, what abilities do I have? Who's in my network? Who do I already know that's maybe doing this or a version of this? Then with version 5, oftentimes what we're going to be looking at is like confirming that, hey, yeah, there actually is the strategy. Maybe I can burr properties and have cash flowing rental properties after the fact. Okay, awesome. Well, now we're getting a little bit more specific. Now I need to find markets where that strategy actually works. And this is one of those big problems that we were mentioning at the start, where people start off with a random constraint. I want to get cash flowing rental properties, but they have to be within a 5-minute drive of where I live, and I live in downtown Toronto. Now, again, we might be able to somehow with Airbnb or re-rentals or some other, exotic strategy, build out something that might work. But why would you handcuff yourself that way in the beginning, right? And this is a mistake I see people make time and time again. In fact, I think I DM'd someone earlier this morning that was asking a similar question that was like, hey, I want to become a real estate investor, but I only want to deal with the big banks. And I'm like, yeah, you can do that. Or, yeah, I want to become a real estate investor, but I only want to buy on-market deals. Again, yeah, you can do that, but it'd be like saying like, hey, I want to be the greatest basketball player of all time, but when I play games, I also have to be wearing like a 50-pound vest, right? Just because I want that constraint. Well, hey, which is more important? Is actually getting the result, becoming the best basketball player of all time? Or is it sticking to this arbitrary constraint you've created for yourself, an arbitrary requirement that really doesn't have much to do with the goal? What's actually more important? Again, if you haven't planned out that vision of the future, it's really easy for you to be like, well, it's going to be impossible for me to do this anyways if I can't do it at a normal bank. Well, is that true? Or is that just kind of an arbitrary assumption or, again, an arbitrary constraint we made? And maybe you're not making this exact mistake, but trust me, if you're not getting the results you want, you're probably holding yourself back in some capacity, in some manner, simply because you think it's not possible, or because you don't believe in the goal enough and you're not willing to make the sacrifices or put in the effort necessary to achieve it. Then finally, version 6, often when we're looking at trying to build out these SMART goals, is reverse engineering the goal into specifically what we're trying to accomplish. Okay, so I know I need $5,000 a month in passive income. Well, I'm probably not going to do that in my first deal. And in fact, it's probably going to take multiple deals. So let's find a market. Let's find a strategy that fits what I'm trying to accomplish, which is generating cash flow. Then let's find out what the standards are. Maybe I look around and I'm like, hey, you know what? It looks like in Windsor, I can get $200 a month in cash flow on a burr property. Maybe it's only $100 a month in London. Maybe it's $10 a month in Toronto. Well, understand that in Toronto, I'm going to need to acquire 500 properties to reach my $5,000 a month. Whereas in Windsor, sounds like I'm going to need 25 properties or 25 units in order to achieve that goal. Now, again, that doesn't inherently make Windsor or Toronto better, but based upon what our goal actually is, which is passive income, it seems like Southwestern Ontario or markets that have higher cash flow are likely going to be more productive for us to focus on as real estate investors. So again, I'd start breaking down more specific goals here for you guys. So making $5,000 a month sounds like a good initial target. There's a whole exercise here that walks you through it. I'll encourage you guys to go through, again, just mattmckeever.com. You can download this. I also walk you through an exercise that relates to being able to do this as a lender in case you don't want to generate cash flow. It doesn't really matter what strategy you choose. What matters is you choose the right strategy for the actual goal, the achievement that you're seeking. So let's get into some tactical stuff now. But again, I implore you guys, before you decide just to get into real estate investing to get rich, get a little bit more specific with yourself. You don't necessarily have to know every detail of that future you're trying to build, but having a North Star, having a guiding star that you can move towards makes life so much easier. You're going to not second guess yourself at every single turn or every fork in the road. Where that person that just arbitrarily decided they want to get rich because of real estate and they saw one Graham Stephan or one Matt McKeever video, well, they're going to have like rubberneck syndrome where they're looking at shiny objects every other moment. Again, each of us is guilty of this to a certain degree, but those of us that have a clear North Star, it's a lot easier for us to regain our focus, to really just dial in our efforts to make sure that we're making progress towards what's our ultimate goal. Your ultimate goal as a real estate investor shouldn't be pleasing the bank. Your ultimate goal as a real estate investor shouldn't be pleasing your brother-in-law or your father or whoever it is in your life that's maybe causing you angst. Your ultimate goal should be creating a financial fortress of solitude, creating a better life for yourself or your family, getting back control of your financial freedom. Those are all worthwhile endeavors. Those are goals. Those are hills worth dying on. Where most of us, we start this ass backwards with arbitrary dollar amounts that mean nothing to us. So start there. But once you figured that out, let's assume that, you're my average demographic, which is, probably a young person, oftentimes male, don't necessarily have a lot of financial resources or assets at your disposal. And how are you going to get started? All right. Well, first things first, let's take a real, true, honest inventory of where we're at. If you've got a bunch of debt, if you've got credit cards, if you've got all kinds of things going on in your life, it's better to shine light on that darkness rather than just try and ignore it and be like, well, I'm just going to make a bunch of money and work my way out of that. Because again, regardless of how much money you make, if you don't have the fundamental best practices when it comes to building wealth, if you're not capable of delaying gratification, if you're not capable of saving money, you really will struggle to ever achieve any significant success. Because again, maybe you'll become a great flipper, but if you don't have your financial house in order, if you still spend always more money than you make, it doesn't matter how much profit you make on that flip, because you're going to find a way to spend it. You're going to find a way to lose that money, right? So taking a step back here and really starting to think about what it is that I want to achieve. What is it that I currently have at my disposal? And a lot of us are actually a little bit richer than we think, not like Scotiabank tells you, but in actuality, because of your network. So odds are that you haven't pissed off every single person in your life up until this point. If you had, okay, well then you're going to have a bit more of an uphill battle. But realistically, there's probably people in your life that do have money or that have real estate investments or have had real estate investments in the past. Now, again, this doesn't mean that they're your silver bullet or easy ticket to success, but don't be afraid to mine those sources. Understand, why did they used to be a real estate investor and they no longer are? Or understand, how did they get their first property? For a lot of people, I get it. You're young, you're impatient, you're not willing to wait and just save up the money for a down payment. I didn't buy my first property until I was 25. So I'll just ignore the, steady, going slow, saving up the down payment, live in your parents' basement as long as possible, or live with roommates as long as possible so that you can save money, because that sounds totally boring. Although that's a very consistent path to success. Again, it comes down to that delayed gratification thing. But we'll ignore that for now because you're probably going to ignore this anyways. So how could you actually start accumulating significant resources and not just financial resources, but also like significant network resources where you actually start, rubbing elbows or bumping into successful real estate investors? Well, you guys have probably heard me say it before, but your network is truly your net worth. So day one, if I decided and I was committed to become a real estate investor, I would allocate a certain amount of my time and energy to making friends in this space. I would DM a handful of influencers and ask them questions and opinions. I'd ask them for referrals to meetup groups or other more micro influencers or gurus. I would also just start joining every Facebook community, every Bigger Pockets community, every regional community associated with real estate investing. Now, again, it doesn't mean that you just drink all the Kool-Aid from any one of these organizations. What we're doing is just collecting information, collecting data points, and we're going to aggregate it and use that in order to help make our path easier, right? Again, the School of Hard Knocks is actually a very expensive education if you could always just learn from other people's mistakes. So we're going to start building out the network. Obviously, we're going to have to learn some basic fundamental skills and abilities as well. If you've decided that you want to go the active route as a real estate investor, well, then likely we're going to be talking about becoming a bird dog, becoming a wholesaler, becoming a flipper, or some other aspect kind of in that realm. If we're looking at semi-passive or passive investing, well, then maybe you're looking at becoming a money lender. And if you don't have any money now, again, you can become a money lender, but it's going to take some time to accumulate that capital. Or maybe we're looking at becoming a BRRRR investor or buy and hold investor. Maybe you want to be somewhere in between and you're going to be an Airbnb investor, which is going to be a bit more active usually than some of those other semi-passive strategies I mentioned. But once you know your goal, we presumably have narrowed down what our strategy is, or at least what a handful of strategies that could be successfully implemented by us are. And then we're going to really dial in our knowledge on that. There is an insane amount of free information out there about real estate investing. If you end up deciding that wholesaling is the thing you want to do, again, literally a free ebook written by Amar from my team. And essentially Amar just breaks down for you guys how he did a $25,000 wholesale deal in 68 days without spending any of his own money. Again, this can be done. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not going to say that there's a silver bullet, but why not learn from Amar and actually go through and read this, 23-page document that he spent the time working on? And again, for those of you that are too impatient to read a 23-page book, you're not going to make it. You're just not. You're going to have to make a bunch of failures, lick your wounds, come back and realize like, oh shit, I'm actually going to need to develop some skills. So if we're talking about becoming a wholesaler, I would really focus on my people skills. I would focus on just getting comfortable talking to people. I'm naturally an introvert. In my third year of university, recognizing that in myself, I forced myself into a door-to-door sales position. It was terrible. I hated almost every moment of it other than the training. And yet it was useful for me. I didn't become a guru door-to-door salesman back then, but those skills still serve me well to this day. And I've been able to build and iterate upon them the same way that any skill set that you've ever developed worked. Again, everyone wants to go from 0 to hero, 0 to 100 overnight. It just doesn't happen. Again, maybe you've got crazy natural talent. You can ignore this shit if you've been able to coast through life up until this point. For most of us, we're actually just going to have to put in the reps and put in hard work. And that's fine because that means that we're completely in control of our success. Again, having a strong internal locus of control, knowing that you're in charge of your future, being willing to take extreme ownership over your situations allows you to always succeed. Because in my opinion, you're either winning or you're learning if you're that person that's got a strong internal locus of control. For everyone else, that life just happens to them, that, the deck is stacked against them, everyone's out to screw them. Man, until you fix your mindset, you're never going to consistently succeed. You might every now and then get a win, but you're never going to become consistently a winner. And that's important to understand. So taking a step back, focusing on what skill sets we're going to develop. Again, there's some other great ebooks here. For those of you that want to get into FIRE, you can see it right there. My head's blocking it. For those of you that maybe have some doubts about, how can I actually succeed as an investor, or why isn't everyone a real estate millionaire? This ebook's really good at just breaking down some of the obstacles, some of the restrictions, some of the self-doubt and self-sabotage that a lot of us do on our journey to becoming a successful real estate investor. Again, encourage you guys, don't make the same mistakes we already have made. Speed up the process for yourself to a small degree. But if I was starting over and, I'm young, I'm relatively aggressive, I want to get some results right away, bird dog. Bird dog is what I'd focus on becoming. Now, it's not sexy. You're not going to get rich overnight with it. Essentially, what you're going to do is generate free or very low paid leads for other real estate investors, ideally for other already successful real estate investors. Well, where are you going to find those real estate investors to be able to go bird dog? Find them in Facebook groups, at networking events, get referrals from people. Honestly, if you bring someone a good deal, they're going to want to reciprocate. They're going to want to provide value to you. Now, a good deal isn't you went and looked on the MLS, brought them the first property you saw. For a lot of bird dogs, we're not going to be able to bird dog just on the MLS. If you could just bird dog on the MLS, everyone would do it because it's the path of least resistance. What it really looks like as a bird dog is, again, tapping into your network. If you're young and poor, odds are a lot of the people in your network are the same. That means there are probably a lot of renters. That's actually a source of potential landlords. You could ask all your friends that are currently renting, hey, can you give me your landlord's phone number? And again, this is a great opportunity for us to either learn or win. Call up that landlord. Hey, you know what? I'm working with a local real estate investor and he's actively looking to acquire properties in the area. And I was just wondering, have you ever thought about selling? Would you be interested in privately selling to us? Hell no, I would never sell to you. Hey, cool. Do you mind if I keep you on the phone for a second? Because it sounds like you're enjoying this real estate investor thing. The reason I'm working with this current investor is I want to eventually become a real estate investor. I'd love to pick your brain just for a few minutes. Honestly, I know that maybe sounds cheesy. Maybe that sounds too easy. But a good number of real estate investors are passionate about being real estate investors. And yet their friends, their family, their spouse are bored to tears hearing them just go on and on about real estate investing. So whenever they've got the opportunity to actually chat with someone that's engaged, someone that's excited, they naturally warm up to you. In fact, a lot of these older, successful real estate investors, they look on you as a young version of them. And they're like, I remember when I was your age, man, I wish I had the balls to be making the calls you're making. I'd be so much further ahead if I would have done that, when I was 18 or 20 or whatever the case may be. Again, that's something that's completely in your control, completely free to do. Worst case scenario is you have a couple awkward phone conversations with strangers. If you're not willing to have a couple awkward phone conversations with strangers, you're never going to make it as an entrepreneur. You're never going to make it as an investor because you're just not willing to go outside of your comfort zone. Understand Joseph Campbell, when he's talking about the hero's journey, that's what this is all about. You're embarking upon a journey as a real estate investor. This is the call to act. This is your call to action. This is me saying, hey, this is possible. You can do it. But you still need to leave your existing realm. You need to take a step into the unknown and be willing to go through trials and tribulations, to embarrass yourself, to struggle at times in order to actually succeed. It's so important you guys understand this, because when you get into the mindset of just like, no matter what it takes, I'm going to do a bird dog deal. No matter what it takes, I'm going to do a wholesale deal. Maybe it takes me a day, maybe it takes me a month, maybe it takes me a year, but I'm going to do whatever is necessary to get on the other side of success, just so at least I know what it takes. Maybe after that year of trying to be a part-time wholesaler and only doing one deal, I just like, this is so much more work than I expected, so little return, but hey, at least I proved to myself and I committed to the process. And that's the real difference I see between the people that actually join this ecosystem and succeed and the people that join it and then fail to ever hit critical velocity, right? That failed to ever even do a single deal. Is a lot of people decided, I'll spend 10 hours. If I don't get rich in 10 hours, it's just probably not worth it. Well, yeah, again, you're focused on the results, not the process, and not even the progress. You're literally just focused on the results. And again, if the idea is to get rich and you haven't got more specific, you haven't really drilled deep into your why, you're going to struggle, and you're going to consistently struggle. And to me, it comes as no surprise, having now seen literally thousands of real estate investors. Why is it like 10 or 20% go on to succeed and the other 80% don't? It's because of everything we've talked about here up until this point. I'll try and come back to some more tips, but I see Sam's hitting me up with a bunch of questions, so I'm happy to jump in here and cover a few. What are your thoughts on prefab 900 square foot houses with lawns built in a factory setting, but very high quality for $50K a piece, holding costs being $225 per unit and charging the public $850 max? Sam, this seems like a very, very specific question. So if you're a brand new investor, again, this already is sounding alarm bells for me. If you're an experienced investor, cool. But again, just understand, far too often people seem like they've got a hammer and everything looks like a nail to them because I know I got a hammer. Why wouldn't everything be a nail? So let me think about this question. What are your thoughts on luxury prefab 900 square foot houses? Well, straight up, 900 square feet in luxury at $50K a piece, that doesn't actually grok for me, right? How are you building a luxury bathroom, a luxury bedroom, a luxury kitchen at $50K a piece? So we're probably stretching our definition of what the word luxury is, but I'll assume that everything you're stating here is true, and that the holding cost being $225 per unit. So I don't know, when you're saying holding costs, whether that refers to like the property taxes, the condo fees, whether that's like utilities, whether that's insurance. Make sure that you're factoring in all those different costs. And then if we're looking at charging the public $850 max, well, first of all, is that just the ceiling the market dictates? Are you going through some sort of government program and that there's kind of a restriction or limitation, and that's why we're able to do it at $50,000 a piece? Just really understand the intricacies here. However, on the surface, if you're telling me that, hey, I can buy a property, the cost to operate are 1/4 of the income that's going to bring in, does that sound like a good deal? On the surface, yeah, it sounds like a great deal. But again, there's different contexts and understandings we need to have in order to really, flush out the potential here. So one thought that immediately comes to mind is, what's the tenant profile? What's going on with vacancy rates, right? And so again, just make sure that the market you're investing in actually fits within your business model. So again, maybe these are like the best cash flowing properties of all time. Maybe you're going to cash flow, $600, $625 a door. That sounds great, especially if we're spending $50K per door in the first place. However, if all of a sudden now your tenants never actually pay, so you don't get the $600, or there's no tenants to move into your property, well, then we're going to have a problem. And this is one of the issues that I see a lot of new investors make when they're not being realistic with themselves. So, and again, this happens to both, experienced investors as well as newbies. So no one take this personally, but I've had people come out to, mastermind events where they've paid thousands or tens of thousands of dollars in order to participate. And then really all they wanted to do was be like, hey, there's this random town in Saskatchewan that's got less than 3,000 people. There's an 8-plex for sale, and I think it's a good investment. Will you give me money, Matt? I'm like, hell no. Do you own any properties in that town? Have you ever been to that town? What's the vacancy rate in that town? How certain are you that this one employer town won't lose that one employer? And so what's happened here again is they stumbled across a hammer and they're looking for a nail, and they're just trying to force that deal into place. So just a word of caution there. But again, if it's a great deal, if it fits within the business model that you want to build, that's going to help you achieve your why, your big goal, absolutely. Sounds great. Pull the trigger. Again, just make sure you understand all the details there. Making extremely profitable if you produce units over time because you pay the land holding costs and property tax. So say $400 a month for a very nice home and charging $850, making affordable. Yeah. So again, if that works that way, Sam, I don't see anything wrong with it, but it's important to really understand that the details there. Same with food. If there were multiple restaurants that worked on an annual buffet format, meaning you pay once at the start of the year and can pick up breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day of the year. Ooh, I'm not sure I understand that. But anyways, best of luck on that, Sam. And again, the devil's in the details here when we're looking at these sort of properties. So just make sure you really understand what you're getting into, right? That there is demand in that area and all that good stuff. Now, getting back to, tactical strategies that I would use if I was trying to get started as a real estate investor. Oh, let's drop that off the screen. As a real estate investor, okay, well, if I'm going bird dog or wholesale, again, me personally, knowing what I know now, I would go and try and find some experts. I would try and find, again, it can be some random person you follow on YouTube. It can be literally just a dude that started wholesaling 6 months ago, but he's done a handful of successful deals. Doesn't really matter, but I'm going to try and find someone that's done it before. Then I'm going to try and learn as much as I can from that person. I'm going to try and provide value to them, because any good human naturally wants to reciprocate whenever they receive value. And so understanding that if I bring that investor a smoking deal and they make a ton of money, then wonderful, awesome. Then immediately they're going to want to reciprocate. They're either going to open up their heart and mind to me, or they might open up their wallet to me. Either way, that's a win. So understand, when we lead with value first, it becomes so easy to build a long-term relationship. Far too often, people are just focused on, I need this from that person, and that's all I want to interact or do with that person. You're setting yourself up for failure already because you don't care about them. We can sense that, right? Like, most humans aren't completely retarded. We've got a little bit of a bullshit detector. And so understand that if you go in only wanting one thing from a person, whether it's money, a deal, or think about it, if you're going to the bar and all you care about is hooking up, that's usually one of the first things you don't get, because one, people can just smell the desperation, but two, you're not willing to put in the process that's going to actually allow you to make progress to get the result that you wanted to achieve in the first place. So focus on ways to provide value to those that are actually successful in the field that you already want to participate on. Now, again, sometimes this can literally look like opening up your checkbook if you've got money and paying someone that's more successful than you to learn from them. But it doesn't have to be that way. Again, I literally think that I've taught a master's class on my YouTube channel. The people that are like, there's too many videos. There's like 2,000. It'll take 2,000 hours to watch them all. You guys understand it took me even longer to make them, right? If I was willing to spend my time and energy making them, presumably I was intending to provide value to individuals. So don't be afraid to go after the free resources first. It might take a little bit more time, but if you're very precious or limited with your money, then presumably you've got an abundance of time. And if you're very precious with your time, then presumably you've got an abundance of money. And if you've got neither, understand that you're just going to have to accept it's going to take longer than other individuals for you to make progress if you've got no resources at your disposal, which is time and money. Now, again, a lot of us claim to not have any time or any money, but it turns out we just don't want to use the time or money we have. So if you've got a Netflix subscription, if you're on Amazon Prime, if you've got cable or satellites or anything, YouTube, outside of educational videos, obviously, then you've probably got some time. And same with money. A lot of people say they've got no money, but actually maybe they bought their first house, or maybe their parents own their house and there's actually equity in there. Then in theory, if you found the right deal, you could tap into in order to use that to leverage into your first deal, your first opportunity, whatever the case may be. Now, oftentimes a lot of people just bring emotions to these situations rather than really just sitting down and being honest with yourself, right? Let's just be brutally honest. Why aren't you willing to spend more time on becoming a real estate investor? Why aren't you willing to gamble the family house on that deal if you really believe in that deal? A lot of people have this misnomer, this misconception that, it's fine to gamble with the bank's money, but it's wrong to gamble with my money or family's money. No, it's just wrong to gamble with money in the first place if you're actually trying to be an investor. So a lot of people, they have this idea that if they reach out to a successful investor and talk them into doing the deal, that somehow one, that guarantees success. It doesn't. Or two, they're like, if I lose the money, I'm not broke. Nope. Any smart, intelligent investor is going to make you put up collateral, going to make you be responsible for that in debt. So understand that regardless of where the money comes from, you need to become a strong fiduciary of that money, or else you'll never succeed long-term as an investor. Again, I see so many people literally almost on a daily basis these days trying to cut corners, trying to just get shit done fast. And it shows. It shows in your workmanship. It shows in your network. It shows in your reputation. And it literally shows in the fucking results you get as a real estate investor. So again, it's really important you guys understand that you fall in love with the process, because if the only thing you care about is progress, you're going to just not do it right. And you're not going to learn the right lessons long term. So make sure you're having fun while you're doing this as well. And that's all just up here, right? I don't get to watch another, I don't even know what mainstream people watch, but I don't get to watch another mainstream network sitcom episode. Oh man, life's so hard on me. I'm going to have to go watch this YouTube video about this guy teaching me to get control of my financial life and build a financial fortress of solitude. If that's the attitude you've got, I can already tell you, you're not going to make it. Where if you actually enjoy the process and you're like, hey, I kind of enjoyed this influencer, or I enjoy reading, so I found all these free ebooks or e-guides or whatever the case may be, that actually makes it an enjoyable process. And guess what happens? You start falling in love with the process, which means the results and the progress are going to follow. See a couple more questions here. Where can I get the book by Amar? So Janice, literally just on mattmckeever.com. So again, if you jump over here, we've got mattmckeever.com, completely free. Literally, if you guys don't even want to give me your email address, you can just read it now, right? Just hit the read now button. We've also got one on buying cottages. There's one on why isn't everyone a real estate millionaire? Starting with your why, right? How to build that real estate empire. And then finally, the financial independence and retire early roadmap. These are, I think, 5 e-guides that I really hope provide value to just everyone in my ecosystem, that hopefully helps give you guys a little bit more confidence, a little bit more clarity, so you can move forward and actually start gaining progress. Because I swear to God, it doesn't warm my heart when someone's like, I've been watching for 5 or 6 years and I still haven't invested. It doesn't mean no good. In fact, if I'm somehow aiding and abetting your analysis paralysis or your shiny object syndrome, that was never my goal, never my intention. And it makes me feel like a failure as a YouTuber. So we're constantly trying to explore and experiment with different ways to present you guys with our content. So whether it's e-guides, whether it's live streams, whether it's, high quality pre-shot videos, we're trying to talk to everyone in every way in the hopes that we can help you guys, because you truly can get control of your financial lives, even in these crazy freaking times we find ourselves in. But circling back to, what would I do, tactically speaking, if I was a newer real estate investor? So again, wholesaling, and you don't have to become an expert. You don't even need to know how to write the contracts if you're just going to be a bird dog. hey, Mr. Really successful real estate investor in Hamilton, Ontario. I think I want to become an investor like you in Hamilton, Ontario. How can I provide value to you? Could I become a bird dog? No, I have no interest in bird dogs. I already got a team of wholesalers. Cool. Well, I've got my driver's license. Could you use a chauffeur? I'll literally just drive you around. Understand that once I was financially independent at the age of 31, I'd already built up a small real estate portfolio. Arguably, I would argue at least, I was a successful CPA with, I had padded my resume pretty effectively, in my opinion. And, had I had the patience to stick it out, I probably could have eventually worked my way up to, a CFO position at a publicly traded entity. But instead, quit all that, went all into real estate investing. And one of the first things I did when I quit my day job to go all into real estate investing was trolled or whatever, just constantly looking on Kijiji for weird and interesting opportunities, right? And so essentially I saw this one ad posted by this, it seemed like a strange individual. He kind of was, but the right kind of strange. That was cryptic. That was like, local real estate investor in London, Ontario is looking for a part-time bookkeeper. I was like, seems kind of interesting. He didn't say name or really any information, but I've got his email address, did a reverse search, figured out who he was. I was like, oh my God, this guy's actually like a successful real estate investor as well. He's got one of the most valuable pieces of land here in the city of London at the time to be developed. And immediately sent him my application. I was like, listen, I'm more qualified than anyone else that's going to apply for this position. Here's my resume, here's my background, here's my experience, here's my references, and I'm going to be cheaper than everyone else that applies for this job because I'll work for free. My only condition, my only caveat is that you be in the room when I'm working. And he was like, well, that's really freaking weird. You need to come here and I need to meet you and just see, but I'm going to have to pay you something. And so literally, next day, dropped everything, went to his office, sat down with him. And I was like, legit, I don't even care if I get paid. As long as I get to learn from you, as long as I get to overhear your conversations, as long as I can pick your brain occasionally, that is the value I'm seeking. And that was a great investment of my time and energy because, again, he didn't make me rich. He wasn't like, oh, man, you're such a good guy. I'm going to write you $1 million check just because you're the salt of the earth. No, he just actually allowed me to sit in on his meetings. And because he knew I was so eager and so committed to providing value to him, he naturally started opening up his Rolodex. Hey, Matt, I've got this kind of important meeting with some developers. They want to buy the piece of land for $20 million. Do you want to tag along? Yes, I would absolutely love to tag along to that meeting. Do you mind driving me? No, absolutely. No problem. I'll drive you there. I'll be your chauffeur, whatever it takes, Peter. And again, it was a wonderful experience because I chose to make it a wonderful experience. I could have easily just been like, man, I left a 6-figure job and now he's paying me $20 an hour to do work that no one else would do for $20. Didn't freaking matter whatsoever. Because again, I would have worked for free if that was part of the condition or the necessity of doing it. Because I was in love with the process of learning more about real estate investing. And I trusted that on the back end of that, all kinds of progress and results and great things would come to me. The same reason that I'm constantly investing in my network, the same reason that I love putting on micro influencers in Canada, because I just know that if I'm constantly abundant oriented, people will just naturally want to reciprocate back and they're going to bring more abundance back to me, or they're going to introduce me to their crazy friends or this crazy opportunity or this deal or this whatever. In fact, that's how Problems and Profits even came to be, was simply that concept of, oh, hey, you know what? Everyone's constantly finding these problems and they're coming to me and Jeff Weibo bitching and complaining at these networking events. And we're like, well, I would just do this. And then I think I'd make a bunch of money off of that. Or they'd be like, oh, this seller wants to sell, but he wants too much money. And we'd be like, well, have you asked him for a VTB? And we would constantly just be trying to solve these problems. And it turns out the more problems you solve, the more profits you got. And when you're really open to the process, when you're really just committed to it, you start to really see opportunities, right? I'm going to flub the term here, but you're reticulating, what is it? Reticulating active system or something, where essentially, someone's like, hey, how many red cars did you see today? And you're like, I don't know, 0. And then the next day you're thinking like, well, how many red cars do I see when I drive? And you're like, holy shit, I saw 105 red cars today. It's because you just weren't paying attention, right? You didn't have any awareness around it because There was no stakes at that point in time because no one had ever asked you how many red cars you see. The same way that for most people, when they actually commit to becoming a real estate investor, all of a sudden they start seeing "we buy houses" signs everywhere. They start seeing realtor signs everywhere. They start seeing "for sale by owner" signs everywhere. It's not that magically all those signs just popped up the day after they decided to become a real estate investor. It's that they actually started paying attention to these things, that they started paying attention to what actually mattered. And by committing to that process, again, they started actually making some progress. This is a great question. Kim here. So I'm a starter, not sure where to start. Having a partner will be helpful, ? So certainly partnerships can be helpful. I think you need to really be honest with yourself about, your personal social dynamics, the potential partner's personal social dynamics. A lot of people, they go through a honeymoon phase as real estate investors and they'll just partner with anyone. That often can come back to bite you. At the same time, I love partners. I love being an optimist. I love trying to see the best in people. So to me, it's less fun doing it alone, doing it without a partner, because sure, I can go make money, but like, who am I going to celebrate with? Who's going to really enjoy the win to the same degree as I do? There's an old saying that, win or joys shared are doubled and losses shared are halved. And that's not just like a financial mathematical equation there, because obviously, wins shared you wouldn't get double the win. It's because the experience, right? It's the energy, it's the fun, it's the excitement, it's enjoying the process with another person. So I really love the different business partnerships I've had. I've really enjoyed growing with them. It's often a great opportunity to learn as well. But circling back to the tactical things that I was telling you guys about, well, okay, when we're looking at, how can I attract a business partner? The same way as anything else, by providing value, right? By actually just focusing on helping people. So if I'm bird dogging for someone and I find a good opportunity, if I'm bird dogging and I find them a deal, well, hey, if they make money off that first deal, the next deal I bring along, I might be like, hey man, I think I found another good deal. But this time, instead of a bird dog fee, I'd love to get a small slice of the pie. Now, again, I've got no money, I've got no experience, I get it. But what if you just expose me to the entire process? And, if you make money off of the deal, I get 10% of it as my, bird dog fee or assignment fee. And if you don't make any money off of it, cool. At least I still get to learn the entire process. As long as you show me all your books, as long as I can show up to the job site whenever, as long as I get to meet your contractors, as long as I get to meet your architect or engineer. That's truly how I would go about approaching this if I was focused on just trying to build relationships first. But this is where you need to be committed to the process. Whether it takes me 5 months or 5 years to become a real estate millionaire, I know that those relationships are going to pay off in multitudes, right? It's something that I've shared with you guys in the past, but I literally believe the best investments I've made aren't a specific financial investment. Earlier today, I sold one of my NFTs. I don't know if you guys have been following along with that stuff, but I sold an NFT, owned it for 124 days, and essentially 10x'd it or made like 90,000 USD off of it. Awesome, wonderful. It's always fun to make money. But at the same time, that's not going to be my best investment. My best investment is going to be my relationship with Adam or Peter or some of the other amazing team members that are on the Problems and Profits team. Not just because like woo-woo, relationships are the best thing ever, but because they're going to become future business partners. They're going to go on to build empires of their own. And I know if I ever fall off, if I ever fall on hard times, they're going to remember that I was there day one for them, trying to help them grow as people. The same way I remember them being there for me day one as a person trying to grow and expand my horizons as well. So I really do love partnerships. You do need to be honest with yourself about the people you're getting into partnerships with. You need to be very realistic about your expectations. It's of absolute critical importance that you always keep the lines of communication open. Every partnership that I've ever had that went sideways or didn't end as great as I'd like is simply because both of us had too big of egos or an unwillingness to be truly open and transparent. It always comes down to that. And so that's absolutely critical. But yeah, I think partnerships can be a great way to expand your horizons, enjoy the process a lot more, as well as compress time, right? You can learn a lot more with a partner, in my opinion, than doing everything yourself. Now, again, some people use that as a crutch and they're like, okay, you're the finance guy, I'm swinging the hammer guy, and we're never going to talk about each other's roles or what we do. Yeah, that's usually going to be a recipe for disaster. That's going to be a recipe for people having misexpectations, misunderstandings, or things of that nature. But circling back, I'll try and give you guys one more last set of tactical pointers here, and then I'm going to be jumping over to my new YouTube channel. If you guys didn't know, there's the Matt McKeever Unfiltered channel. Really encourage you guys to check that out. Where essentially every Monday at 7:20 Eastern Standard Time, I go live. We kind of hang out. I often smoke some weed and just kind of talk about whatever's going on. So whether it's NFTs, the new society or community I'm building at the Problems and Profit Citadel, or just some random tangent where I'm just yelling at government. It can go a lot of different directions, and usually it's a ball of wax of all three and more topics. But if I was starting over, if I was some 20-something individual that was very focused on building my real estate empire, the best investment I could make is my network day one. I don't need to necessarily pay to get into rooms. If I don't have money, I wouldn't pay to get into a single room. But I would find ways that whenever I met a real estate investor to provide them value. And don't be afraid sometimes to literally be point blank about it. Hey, you seem like a really impressive person. I can't believe that you're X years old and built this portfolio or you've succeeded so much. I'm just getting started. I don't have a lot of resources, but I do have a lot of time. Is there any way I could provide value to you and just learn a bit more from you? I don't want to be a weight. I don't want to be a net negative or net unaccretive investment for you. So again, you tell me, do you need a driver? Do you need more deals, more leads? Do you need someone to cut the grass? Like, how can I provide value to you? And again, if after a few weeks, a few months, whatever you think is the appropriate time, it starts to feel like a really one-way relationship, don't be afraid to re-explore, renegotiate it, or just move on. Again, not every person I've provided value to immediately reciprocated and became a guru or mentor to me. It's just not going to happen. However, again, if you do this enough, if you commit to the process of providing other people value first, it's going to come back to you in droves. So really appreciate you guys following along here. The key is, please don't just get, punch drunk on a specific strategy or a specific market until you've discovered your why. Be very open and honest with yourself. Try and find an emotional core. You don't need to have your entire life planned out in advance, but having that guiding North Star that you can move towards will really allow you to avoid things like analysis paralysis as well as shiny object syndrome. So I encourage you guys, get started today. Start focusing on whatever is within your control to start building that financial fortress of solitude, because no one else is going to do it for you. I'm more than happy to try and provide as many free resources as possible, but it's still going to be up to you to step up to the plate and do it. One of my favorite sayings that I'm sure almost every one of my team members is just annoyed to no ends about, because I just talk about it or I reference it at least on a weekly basis, is one of my favorite Buddhist sayings is, when the student's ready, the teacher appears. There are teachers around us at all times. They don't have like a master's of education though, normally. They're actually just normal people that are doing the right actions, right? They're committed to the process. They're making progress, or they've already achieved results you want. Reach out to those individuals, build relationships, provide value to them, and you'll be surprised by what you get in return. But again, don't go in there with the expectation that I did this for you, so now you owe me that. That's also not going to fly with successful people. But I wish you guys the best of luck. Enjoyed being back here, and I'll be back next Monday. We'll do another live at 6 p.m. Smash the like button, hit subscribe, and for those of you that are going to jump over to the Unfiltered channel, I'll see you shortly. Thanks, guys.